So I figured what I'd do is a really quick video detailing how to configure Spock to work with your Statamic website, and how to configure Forge to automatically push up any changes committed by Spock on your live server. Now that might be complete gobbledygook. If it is, basically the idea behind it is that as Justin Jackson was talking on his live stream about 10-20 minutes ago from when I'm recording this, one of the best benefits of Statamic is that it stores all of its content as flat files. Now, what this means is that you can version control all of the content, all of the configuration on your website very easily. For people like me who frequently work with other developers, or potentially across computers and across different servers, it makes it very easy to keep everything in sync. It makes it very easy to move between different environments, whether that is staging or production or the local version of the website on my machine. So what I wanted to do was to just walk through how to set it up, how to get everything working. And then what I figured is we can then look at how you would configure Forge to basically auto push stuff up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly spin up a really basic out of the box Statamic site. So I'm going to use the CLI to do this, and we're just going to call it Spock. Let's just let it pull down the latest version, and it will extract the zip file. Take a little bit longer than normal just because obviously I'm running the streaming software. We'll create a user right now because I'm not going to be getting rid of any of the files. Let's call it then. Let's go with that. Let's put that in. No, that's really that important, but obviously we do want it to be a super user. So let's change into the Spock directory, clear that just so it's not blocking up the screen, and then I'm going to open this in Visual Studio Code. So let's just give this a second. And I'm also going to here go to spock.localhost. So as I've said before, I use Valet, so I don't have to set up a virtual host. The software does it for me. And we just give it a second, we'll see. Yep, there we go. We've got a new Statamic site up and running. I'm just going to open up a new tab and log into the control panel. Just give it a second. Right. Let's give it a second to log in. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to have I got any dummy question? Have I got any dummy URLs that I can hook this onto? Probably not, but what I can always do is I can just spin up a really simple subdomain on my URL, and then we can go from there. So, okay, right, let's just get what we need to get done first, which is we need to download Spock. So what we can do is we can just download it, give it a click. I have actually already downloaded this, so I'm just going to open up my downloads folder, open up a new one, go to sites, go to Spock, And so, as you can see, guys have created it within add-ons folder. So I'm just going to go into add-ons. Come on. Thank you. I'm just going to copy that into there. And now if we go to the control panel, we go to add-ons, we should in theory see Spock. Yep, there we go. We can see it's installed and we can click into it just to configure it. And we're going to say it will only run on production. So what this basically means is with Statamic out of the box, you will get a file that will be called sample.env. That is a .env file, and that gives you the ability to define certain server level or environment level variables, including, for example, which environment you're running in. So what I will do very quickly is in VS Code, I'm just going to rename sample to just env, and actually, you know what, let's call this production. So normally you don't need to set the app_env, which is your environment variable, to production if you were actually on a server. So we can see here Spock will only run in a specified environment, so we set it to production, git push, whether Spock should perform a git push after the default git command. So what will happen is when an event is triggered within Statamic that Spock is looking out for, and there are a long list of events that it is looking out for, things like entry saved, page saved, settings saved, user saved, anything like that, page created, etc., etc. If any of those events are triggered by someone using the control panel, it will tell Spock, or Spock will keep an eye out for that event, and if it's fired, Spock will fire, Spock will make a commit, and then out of the box it will do nothing. You can, by turning this on, have Spock push automatically to your environment, to your repo. Been a long week. If you want, you can also set it to your various things. I think mine's I mean, it really isn't important because, you know, typically I will call it Spock. I actually tend to call it Spock, and then I'll say Spock at benfurphy.co.uk, mainly just so I can see which of the commits that have been done by Spock. We can also see commands before and commands after. Realistically, there isn't always a massive issue. What you might want to do if you're going to turn on git push would be run git pull beforehand. If you've ever used Git and I can't remember what the exact error is, but when you try and push, it says that there are upstream changes, I think is the error. That's just basically saying that there are changes in the repo on the same branch that you need to pull down first. Okay, so once we've done that, however, I don't tend to do it there. What I tend to do is I will get it to push, but in fact, actually, I tend to leave it git push off within Statamic, and the reason for that is that typically I will get it to be done through Laravel Forge. Okay, so what I'm going to do quickly is I will show you a very quick environment. I'm just going to quickly open Tower, create a new repo, go to sites, go to Spock. You did not see the free things. Your eyes are deceiving you. Into Spock. Let's go there. Okay, so let's just quickly stage all of this. and we'll just call it initial commit, just so we can get it all out the way. In fact, actually, I've just made a bit of a boo-boo. If you're going to use version control for your own sanity, make sure you remove the sample from before git ignore, because otherwise it will add an absolute ton of files which you do not want it to commit. So assuming that you haven't made the same mistake that I did, it's now ready to commit. We'll just commit that. We're going to leave it on master. Obviously, you don't really want to leave it on master, but then actually technically any changes that you're making could be in master. You could have a separate branch called production. Your master could stay clean. It all depends on how complex you want it. The system that we have in my day job is incredibly complicated. Whereas a lot of the ones that I just do for my sort of small freelance clients tend to be a much simpler process. So we now have this. If we go into pages, in theory, this could embarrass me if it doesn't work. But in theory, if I go into pages and let's say I'm going to go into about me, and I'm going to change Niles' name from Niles to, let's just say, Harry Potter. And let's save this. Now what should happen is on clicking save, it will trigger the page saved event. It really doesn't matter what the thing is called, to be entirely honest. But if we now go here and we look at history, we can see here that we have a new commit committed by Spock, and we get page saved by Ben, and we can see exactly what was changed. Now, I think if I remember correctly, I've never really changed it, but you might be able to configure Spock to have slightly different commit messages, potentially. Maybe not. Maybe I'm imagining that. Not entirely sure. Anyway, it's not really crucial, to be honest. I mean, the commit messages are quite clear. That was a page. Let's go into a blog collection, and we'll go into one of the entries. Not entirely sure what that error was then, but I think it may have just been Ajax being a bit slow. And then let's change it to Land Rover to I don't know, Nissan Pathfinder. Those things are terrifying when they come up behind you. Let's say that, and then if we go to this again, we'll see entry saved by Ben. So as you can see, whatever you save, you can get it to basically work that way. If we were to go to add-ons, let's say if we didn't want to have an event saved. So this is extremely unlikely, but let's just say that you did want to do that. So the PHP class name. All right, so realistically, this is not going to be, a particular thing. Before we do this, just to show you, it does work before we turn it off, and then it doesn't work after we disable it. Let's quickly go to users, and I'm just going to go in here, and I'm going to end up. Let's put it in the biography. Ben is awesome. I am not big-headed at all. So, obviously I just realised I don't have my webcam on, so you didn't see the sarcastic grin then. Right, okay, so if we go to Tower now, we should see user saved by Ben. Let's now add this particular class. Okay, so within Statamic events, data user saved. If we do this, and we now get this. Let me go back into my user. And let's just go, Ben is not really that cool. And we save this. In theory, I've never done this, so I might be wrong, but in theory, if I go through to this, okay, yeah, so we can see we have got a change here, but it's to do with us adding the ignore event. As magic, as you sort of, because everything is still tracked with it being Git repo, you can see that the change is here, but it hasn't automatically been committed. So this would be really useful for if you want to basically prevent anybody from being able to manually or sort of change users through the control panel, if you want to make sure that you can roll things back really easily. As I said, not a massive thing, but it's still quite useful to know. What I am going to do now, though, is I'm going to I'm just going to drag my Forge over here. And I'm going to go into, what's a good example? Let's go into this. Okay, so when you go into a site in Forge, this is the second part, you will see that it will automatically create a deploy script. Okay, and this is your bog standard one. It doesn't have anything particularly special about this, but what we can do is with one line add a way of pushing things to your repo in shorter bursts. So rather than every time you make a change, commit it and push it to whichever branch. Maybe you want to have it commit all of your changes so that you can do a review. I've just had the idea that potentially, I don't know, I'm not entirely sure if it's possible, but it may be possible to open up a pull request from the command line. I've got no idea, I haven't looked, but let's say you want to do it the way that I normally do it. Obviously you would have the script change into the relevant directory. You then want to git pull on whichever branch you've called, so it could be master in this case, you might call production, and then before we have the service reload, all we need to do is just add git push. So it's really important that git push comes after git pull, because as I said before, if you are going to try to push to something that has changes committed, you are going to have a bad time. Best case scenario, your repo will say, nah, no, not doing that. Worst case scenario, it will push and you will end up with a load of merge conflicts. Not really what you want, especially because merge conflicts can break your website. So always try to make sure that you have pulled first, and then we want to run git push. Okay, so we can click on save script, and really now what we can also do is normally this wouldn't be enabled. All enable quick deploy does is that every time you push to this, what it does is I don't think you can't quite see it here, but the idea is that you would have your repository defined. It will have a webhook that will be watching, or it'll be watching the webhook on GitHub for any events that basically say that there has been a push to master. You don't need to worry about what webhooks are. Basically, it's just that GitHub will tell, or will send out a broadcast that says, hey, anybody listening, this has happened. So when it hears that, the branch that you have associated with this with, so master, for example, has got a new update, it will then go, okay, right, what I want to do is I want to enable quick deploy, and what will happen is it will then automatically deploy. It will also trigger this script, so it will change into this directory, it will pull the latest changes, and it will then push any changes that you have made on your server since you last changed anything. Now, in theory, you shouldn't get merge conflicts. Obviously, there is a risk of this. It's the one downside of using Git. I have never run into this. I have about 15 sites using this process. So, realistically, it shouldn't happen. It might happen. You kind of hope it doesn't, but if it does, all you need to do is obviously sort of go into your Git repo and figure out what it is. I think Forge is smart enough that if it detects a merge conflict, it will stop deploying. Obviously, if you really want to make sure that you don't have any downtime, that's where a tool like Laravel Envoyer would come in, where effectively it keeps a couple of the previous deploys, and it only symlinks over or switches to symlink when it is happy. But it all depends on sort of what your deployment requirements are. So what I'll do, just to go back over it, just for those who maybe joined a little bit later, you want to set up your site. You want to download Spock from the Statamic marketplace. You then want to take that file, install it into your Statamic website, log into your Statamic website, go to the add-ons. You want to go to the add-ons in the side, click on that. You then want to wait for a second, click on the name. That will take you through to the options. You can also click on the three dots and then click on edit. You want to define the environments. You can set it to Git push, you don't have to. It's also really good to set up the username and email. It can be whatever you want. I typically set it to Spock just so I can quite clearly see what is going on. Any commands that you want to run before or after. So, for example, if you were Git pushing, you'd probably want to run Git pull beforehand. That's the reason why I don't do it in here, because I don't want to be automatically pulling all the time. I'd rather only pull when I actually have a change that's been made. And then you can also set it to ignore events. And if you wanted to not ignore the event anymore, it's as simple as clicking the X that will appear there and then clicking save. Within Laravel Forge, as I said, all you've got to do is amend the deploy script. As I said, normally it comes with 3 lines. You literally just, after git pull, add git push. And all things being well, when you enable quick deploy, assuming that you have got a GitHub account that is sending out webhooks, and it should do that by default, when Forge detects that there is a new change or a new version of the branch that's been pushed to the repo, it will automatically deploy, it will automatically run this script, and it will automatically push up any changes. So hopefully that will help. And sorry about that, Kim, I did not see you messaging because I did not have it open at the time. So sorry, just learning at the moment. So if you have any questions in the meantime, I'm going to be going back through this probably in a bit with Justin on his screencast where he's transferring Transistor FM from WordPress to Statamic. So if you want to go through that again and you want to see any questions that Justin comes up with, because inevitably he will come up with questions and there'll be good ones, feel free to keep an eye out for him, subscribe to his channel, subscribe to mine, And yeah, like I say, if you've got any questions, drop them on the bottom of this video, and I will do my best to answer them. So until next time, thank you very much. All right, bye.